Today's video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit more vloggy than what I usually do. But the reason I wanted to do it was because in a recent video where I showed some upcycling projects I've been getting on with, a lot of people said that they really liked seeing that content. A lot of people said that it was quite inspiring and it inspired them to go away and learn some upcycling or darning or, various crafting projects for their own wardrobe. And that made me really, really happy. And it also kind of made me reflect on the fact that a lot of my channel is obviously centered towards sustainable fashion, and I spend a lot of time calling brands out, calling out ways that the industry can be better, but I don't focus a lot on what we can be doing within our own wardrobes to be more sustainable. And I think this is a really important part of the entire sustainable fashion discourse. Maybe I haven't addressed it before now because I don't consider myself an expert in caring for clothing or in upcycling or crafting, but there are a few things that I do, and there are a few things I'm teaching myself to do now because I've become a lot more passionate about what we can do as individuals. And seeing your reaction to the other video, I thought it could be fun to share some of those other ways that I try to be sustainable in my own wardrobe, just in case it inspires anybody to do the same. So with that in mind, I wanted to share some of the projects I've been doing just this weekend to look after the clothes I own, from sewing and upcycling some various garments that are in need of repair, to showing the washing process for a couple of different garments in my wardrobe which need a little bit more TLC, to also filming my biannual swapping of my wardrobe over from autumn winter to a bit more springy summer. But also I included going to an exhibition here in London which was so interesting, so important, and taught me a new upcycling skill, which I then decided to use this weekend as well. So there is just so much stuff that I thought would be really, really fun to share. There's also a little bit of an update on those Garni dress straps from my previous video that you all had suggestions on. So that might be interesting to some of you. And yeah, I hope the entire video is interesting, to be honest. I hope it kind of sparks conversation about how we can be caring for our clothes in better ways. I hope you guys give some suggestions for other ways we can be caring for our clothes in the comments below, or let me know if I've done something that could be improved on a little bit, because as I said, I don't consider myself an expert in caring for clothing. These are just those systems I put in place that work for me. But yeah, as I said, I hope this is entertaining and also educational, and kind of highlights how important it is for us to be paying attention to the clothes we already own and making that a bigger part of the sustainable conversation than the brands we should be shopping from, I guess, because that is the question I probably get asked most consistently on the channel, is what brand should I be supporting? Which, for one thing, I absolutely hate that question because the industry is an absolute mess right now, and coming up with a straight answer for that is very, very hard. But two, it focuses the attention on buying more when really we should be focusing on making do with what we already have and making that stuff the best it can be. So yeah, I hope this video contributes to the conversation in that way. And with that, let's get into it. Okay, so first thing I wanted to show was washing my wool items in my wardrobe, because not only is this a great way to stop worrying about your delicate clothes shrinking in the washing machine and dryer, and if you've been burned before like me, then you'll know it becomes an ever-present fear whenever you wash anything with a scrap of wool in it that it's going to shrink, but I actually find this such a calming experience. It sounds a little bit weird because, as you'll see, it involves wringing the water out of the clothes as though you're trying to strangle someone, but I love just popping my headphones in and listening to a podcast or singing along to musicals, as I was when filming this, and kind of getting lost in it. It's a really simple process. Just get some lukewarm water, dunk the jumper in and get it wet, and then add your washing liquid. I just use the same one as I would put in the washing machine because I figured it's already a delicate one, so it's fine. But I think you can also get a specific washing powder for wool if you want. And then when that's in, I just rub the soap in, paying attention to the parts which are most likely to be smelly or dirty from wear, like necklines, armpits, and the cuffs of the sleeves. And then once it's done, I always do a sniff test. And then I drain the soapy water from the tub and rinse off the soap as best as I can. Normally I use the arm attachment from my sink, but you could also just get a cup and pour some water over and squeeze out. And then comes the hardest part, which is like fully you commit to squeezing the water out. I think you can actually get presses where you roll the jumper through it and it squeezes the water out for you. So if squeezing it out by hand is not an option or it seems too much, then you could definitely look into that. And I have thought about looking into that because I get super tired at the end of this process. But it normally takes about 3-4 minutes to do this in total. And yes, your hands hurt, but it's not terrible. Like I said, I find this sink super useful for doing this whole process because it is big and it has the pull-out attachment for rinsing, but I don't also think it's actually necessary. And I've done this before by filling a plastic tub with water and then just using a cup to rinse. So not necessary to have a fancy sink like this, but it is nice. And another thing I wanted to mention was that I know this looks like a long process, but it actually took me 20 minutes to wash both jumpers and listen to songs as I did it. And because wool doesn't need cleaning often because of the material's natural properties, I only actually end up doing this about once a month at most. So it's like 20 minutes once a month, and that's like the entirety of looking after my wool items in my wardrobe. So I don't think it's too much, especially since the wringing out the water is the hardest part. Like once you've done with this, you just put a thick towel down on a nearby surface and you lay your jumper out on top. You should try like reshape it into its normal shape and get the creases out from wringing it as best as you can. Otherwise they might be harder to get out later on. But then you just roll it up like a Swiss roll and leave it to dry, and that's literally it for the entire washing process. You can leave it overnight, but I actually accidentally left these ones for 2 days because I had a cold and didn't want to set up the camera and film like the whole process. It just seemed like too much. So I left them for 2 days, and when I did, they were completely dry pretty much, but also a little bit smelly. So I'd recommend not doing that and leaving them for about 12 hours at most, like overnight, before taking them out of the towel and laying them out to air dry on a nearby surface. You can do this on a flat surface. I use my air dryer, but again, it's quite important to make sure that they are in the right shape that you want them to be when you're leaving them to air dry, and then literally just leave them and wait for them to dry. It normally takes about another day for them to fully dry because the wool does hold the water. But yeah, super simple. And as I said, I do this once a month. So I do actually find myself enjoying the process, kind of. Okay, the next activity I wanted to show was bleaching my white clothes. And honestly, this is new to me. I haven't done this before, but I actually saw a TikTok of someone doing it and doing a great job at refreshing their white t-shirts, and it inspired me. Since I have more than a few items in my wardrobe that are white that have like lost their brilliance, or they have makeup or sweat stain marks, and they bug me every single time I go to put them on and make me a little bit self-conscious. And when you compare those graying t-shirts to the bright white of a freshly purchased one, it's honestly so tempting to go out and buy a new one. But instead, I found some tutorials online and went out to get some bleach powder from the supermarket. It was only like £3, and then just got like a hard bristle brush and made a paste with bleach and water, and then just started scrubbing the specific stained areas first because I thought that they might need some extra whitening. And then I dunked the entire garment in the tub with some diluted bleach powder and hot water and let that sit for like 20 minutes. And that was it. For one of the tops, I purposely didn't dunk the garment and only did some spot cleaning with the brush because it had a graphic on it. So I was kind of scared of that rubbing away if I exposed it too long to the bleach. But then I kind of forgot that and put some bleach powder in the washing machine too with all the garments. So we'll see how that turned out later on in the video. Like I said at the beginning, I went to an exhibition here in London that was all about repairing your socks. And genuinely, I've been wanting to go see this exhibition for months, and it's closing at the end of March, I think. So I was buzzing to finally get to visit it. I know it sounds silly. I know it's just like repairing socks, but standing in front of a wall filled with hundreds of pairs of socks that people had took the time and effort to repair, probably hundreds of hours worth of labor on display right in front of you, and also being aware that if these socks hadn't been repaired, they'd probably have ended up in landfill, but instead someone had taken the time to repair them and, you know, make them even more beautiful with this visible darning was so inspiring. And I didn't realize, but part of the exhibition was teaching you how to darn yourself, which is a skill I mentioned I wanted to pick up in my previous video. So we sat down and followed the instructions to repair a stranger's socks, and I surprised myself with finding it quite easy. And I thought maybe it's because I've been practicing and improving my sewing skills recently, But my fiance also had a go, and he's never done any sewing in his life before, but he did a great job. So I think it just shows how accessible it can be, and like how easy it is to follow these instructions and repair these garments, even if not like at the highest level, but like enough that they're usable again. The workshop showed me that it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be beautifully hand stitched and really tight knitting. It just has to be functional. And that's actually a really easy level to get to. I absolutely love going to this exhibition. It's by Celia Pym, and I found this stat actually from Wrap that says for every 5 items repaired, 4 of them replace a new purchase, which is honestly amazing. And I found that, again, really, really inspiring and really poignant when I was looking at this exhibition on people's socks. So with that little bit of experience and inspiration, I decided to go home and darn my own socks, because it seems like I get holes in them all the time. It's literally a running joke in my family that my toes will be sticking out whenever we take our shoes off inside, and I'm so tired of it. So I found some old ones stuffed in the back of my wardrobe and tried to find some embroidery wool on my high street in order to repair them with. But the only thing I could find was this kind of thick wool in a charity store. So I decided to try it, and I split the threads so what I was working with was a little bit thinner and could actually fit in my needle. And actually, they turned out okay. My darning was a little bit messy and not as tightly knit as I saw on some of the socks from the exhibition, but hey, this was literally my second time trying it, so I count it as a win. And I actually had so much fun just sitting there sewing whilst watching TV. The wool itself turned out to be a bit fuzzy for this project, but the colour was so cute that I couldn't resist trying it. And maybe for my next attempt, I'll look harder for the right kind of wool. But I do think that this was a success. And I do think that darning these socks has meant that I'll be able to wear them again and not like throw them away or have to find a textile recycler. So I think that is a major win. And actually, while we're here, I know someone asked in my previous video where I got my resources to learn to sew and how I picked it up. And honestly, I did just kind of teach myself basic sewing with trial and error. But when I went to the workshop with Lydia, I learned harder stitching, like a blanket stitch, and also some tips and tricks, and found it super helpful to learn from her. So I definitely recommend going to a workshop or checking out Lydia's social media, the content she shares, because she has really accessible ways of learning how to sew. And I found it really useful in the past. And if anyone else has recommendations or resources for other ways you can learn how to sew, then leave them in the comments please, to help others. Okay, so moving on. I said at the beginning I had an update for you guys on those cute leftover straps from my Ghani dress. And not to say I lied, but basically after reading all of your suggestions, I initially thought I would go for a scrunchie, since it seemed to be the clear favourite amongst you and also relatively easy for me to try. But then I was second guessing because my hair isn't really long enough to need one, and I don't know if it would look like stupidly big around the tiny bun that I can fit the top half of my hair in. But I agree it would look super cute, so I was still considering it. And also I was considering all the other ideas that you guys mentioned that were super cool. I really like the idea of using them as bag straps, but when I measured them on my shoulder, I realized they were a bit too small. So that sucks, and I don't think I can do that. I literally considered all the suggestions and was Googling and researching and trying to find inspiration, and none of them felt absolutely right. Although I did like the other idea I got really excited about, which was a bag charm, and I found some cute inspo photos that I thought could be really, really sweet. But again, it just didn't seem really right, and I didn't want to rush it just for this video so I could show it on here and then end up hating it in the long run. So I'm still sitting with it. I think the most likely ideas are a scrunchie and a bag charm, because I obviously have 2 sleeves, so I can make 2 things. But don't kill me, you're not going to see it in this video. You'll probably see the final decision when I upload it on my Instagram, so make sure you're following me on there, because I'm not going to do a whole other video just on these scraps. But yeah, I promise you I did take your considerations into account, and they might still happen. I'm just still deliberating. After that, let me give you an actual satisfactory update, so you don't kill me. I took the white tops out of the wash once it was done and hung them up on the air dryer. And when I got them off the drying rack and actually looked at them, they look noticeably brighter. Like, I was actually quite shocked. They definitely weren't perfect. I think makeup stains are super hard to get off, so maybe I need to repeat the process to fully get rid of them around the neck of some of the t-shirts. But the armpits of my baby tees were much lighter. The sweat stains were almost completely gone. And overall, they did just look better, they looked whiter. So I was super happy with this, and honestly it was not a hard process. Again, it probably took me 5 minutes to do this entire thing. Left them in a whitening bath for like 20 minutes and then just put them on like a normal wash. Like, it was not hard, and I would definitely do it again. One thing I didn't mention before actually was how I air dry all of my clothes rather than using a dryer, because honestly it just seems like second nature to us now. So I didn't really consider it to be a sustainability tip at first. But not only does it obviously use less energy, it's also better for your clothes and puts them through less strain and high heat. Honestly, it doesn't take any time at all to do it this way. Usually we hang up in the morning and then it's done by that evening or maybe the next morning. If it's especially cold here, like in winter, we normally do leave it for about 24 hours. And yeah, it's just literally so simple. Hang them, walk away, and then just they're ready in like the next day. And normally they smell better than in the dryer. Like, I'm sorry, not sorry, but I hate the smell of dryer clothes. And then the last thing I did this weekend, which was a busy weekend for looking after my clothes, was my biannual wardrobe migration. Basically, the thickest winter clothes go back into storage under my bed and my spring summer clothes come out. Although I don't get rid of all my warm clothes, like all of my jumpers, because this is England and it will always be slightly cold year round. But before I switched around the clothes, I straightened and tidied what was already out in my wardrobe and pulled out the winter clothes as I went. Because honestly, although I think this is kind of tedious to straighten out your wardrobe, it's an important task that I try to do whenever I notice my wardrobe is messy. Because how do you expect to wear all of your clothing and get the most out of your wardrobe when you can't see half of it shoved in the back or hiding in messy piles? I'm not saying you have to arrange it by colour and specific sections like me, although I do find this really helpful for deciding what to wear, but just making sure that everything is visible to you is really useful to get you to wear your clothes more. Also, just a note in case you're wondering, I feel like I'll point out the obvious because like with the air dryer, maybe some people don't know this, but apparently it's best to not hang your sweaters as it causes them to lose shape quicker and be warped by the hanger, which is why all of mine are in the basket in the bottom of my wardrobe, just like tucked and folded away. Okay, so whilst I was pulling out the winter bits from the wardrobe, I was also kind of reflecting on whether I'd worn them at all this season or the one before. And a few of them I actually realised I hadn't worn at all, and I was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do with them. A few of them I put in a specific pile because I have future upcycling projects for them and I want to keep them for that. But others I put in a pile to upload to Depop for someone else to love, because I figured if I haven't touched these clothes for 6 months, then they're not getting enough use in my wardrobe and someone else could be wearing them a lot more than me. And then once I finished that, I got my spring summer clothes out of storage and put them away. A few of them need an iron or steam, but I normally do that when I go to wear them for the first time. So the whole process took me about 15 minutes tops. Maybe because I don't think I have a massive wardrobe, but also because it's a very simple process that makes dressing for the seasons a lot easier for me. I'm not hunting through thick winter clothes in summer to try find something to wear. It just makes it a lot more visually easy to put together an outfit. And actually, I didn't show this on camera, but normally I also put my heavy winter coats in a vacuum sealed bag and then put them under the bed, so they're kind of a bit scrunched and don't take up as much space. And if you're tight on space in general, you could do this with all of your winter clothes maybe, if you don't have a lot of storage. So that's a tip. And then lastly, I wanted to get those 3 items onto Depop immediately rather than letting them sit in a pile for 6 months, which I've done before. So I just took some basic shots in the mirror and then some close-up ones of garment tags, and they're now live on my Depop, which I'll put on the screen in case you want to go browse or you like some of those new items and want to go buy them. And if you do go to buy them, let me know if you're coming from my YouTube and I'll give you an extra 10% off for watching the video this far, because I very much appreciate you guys for that. And with that comes the end of this vlog, all about how I care for my clothes and how you can care for your clothes. Enjoy these behind the scenes from filming, including where I forgot my camera was on and got too caught up in watching My Fault London that I couldn't thread a needle properly. So enjoy laughing at me, and I hope you have a lovely day and enjoy this video, and I see you soon. Bye!